Hello, everyone. You are listening to Kingdom Stories, where we tell stories of hope and power from the lives of everyday Christians just like you and me. It's my hope that these stories encourage you in your walk with the Lord and remind you weekly about how awesome our God is. Hello, everybody. I'm here with my father, actually. His name is Tim Case. Say hi, Dad.
Hello, all.
All right, Dad, you want to start giving us some details in the background? You want to start telling your story?
So I call this Once Upon a Kidney. And first, I want to say that serious medical situations have a lot of different facets to its impact. And so I'm covering a lot of things here. But it is a God story when it's all over. When I was about 20 years old, I got a staph infection that was kind of like a chest cold. But after a couple of days, my urine turned dark brown and I had to go down to the doctor. After they did a lot of testing, it turned out I had IgA nephropathy, and they said I was going to have kidney failure in about 10 years. So started a long, slow decline, but I made it last all the way until I was 40. So I got about 20 years out of the 10-year run. So I guess that was good. A little background on myself. I don't want to like boast in this, but I had a really good set of legs when I was young. I would bicycle, hike, play basketball. I had to enlarge my pant legs in order to fit because my waist was so small and my legs were so big. I'm serious. I did that. That's one of the things I learned to sew for was like I would put a wedge into my pant leg.
Wow.
I got a job at a refinery, and it was a unit that was 275 feet tall. And just for fun, I had a coworker time me. I ran to the top, ran back down, ran back up and back down in less than 12 minutes.
Wow.
There was another structure that was about 150 feet tall that had an elevator and very steep stairs. My coworker took the elevator. We both started at grade. He had to go get the elevator open, which gave me a little bit of a head start. But I took the stairs and I beat him to the top of the structure.
Wow.
Okay. I had very good endurance. I could hold my breath for over 4 minutes. I tell you that because it kind of puts in perspective how far down I went when I was in failure. Normally, one of the primary tests that they do is for what's called creatinine. And typically, you want it to be between about 0.5 and 1 for healthy. And you start shutting down around 5 or so. Time of my diagnosis, my creatinine was 0.9. When I was 30, it crossed 2. We started doing all kind of stuff. This was fairly early in our marriage with Mary, and she was trying herbals and whatnot. But in spite of all of our attempts, the numbers kept on moving. I would get tired more easily. A couple of flights of stairs, I'd be winded.
Wow.
And for me being able to run stairs, I was accustomed to doing 2 and 3 steps at a time. And now I'm doing 1 step at a time. And now I'm resting at landings.
Wow.
So I'm really struggling here. So I had a blood test right after my 40th birthday, and my creatinine was 9.0.
Whoa.
The doctor all but demanded I start dialysis immediately. But we had already bought tickets. We were going to a family reunion in Oklahoma. And I'd already got tickets for my kids. We're all going together. And if I start dialysis, I'm not going. And so I decided I was going to wait till I got back. So at the reunion, we went to the zoo. My mom and 2 kids and I were going to the zoo. I had a backpack on with a couple of bottles of water in it. And getting around to the back side of the zoo, it was downslope a little bit. And now I'm having to go upslope. And I ran out of gas. I could not get up. Even a very gentle, they don't make these things on cliffs. Okay? The very gentle slope of the zoo passage was too steep for me to get back up. I would begin to get dizzy and my legs would buckle. I handed my backpack over to my aging mother. That was kind of a humiliating thing to do. But then I still couldn't get back up, and I ended up bench hopping, going from bench to bench, making my way back to the front of the zoo to get to the car. When we finally got back to the house, I just flopped on the floor and lay there for a couple of hours, totally out of gas. Another thing that was happening there was that my sister Lois began to get a gentle nudge from God that she would need to give me a kidney. she's 2 years older than I, and when we were children, I picked on her regularly. While there was some improvement in our relationship during our teen years, it never really grew into a positive one. And now we're adults, 2,000 miles apart. There's little reason to reach across the miles. As Mary and I began looking at various options for managing kidney failure, there really are no good options, unfortunately. Transplants agreed to be the best option, but it's got this cocktail of drugs that one has to take, and the side effects are pretty sobering, actually. You have a compromised immune system and a higher likelihood of cancer after a few years. I joined an email loop for kidney transplant patients, and the notes were downright depressing. There was kind of a joke running around that no matter what you named, if you said you had an arm growing out of your chest, they would point out that it was a side effect of some drug you were taking. But that's kind of the morbid sense of humor that the people on the loop got.
Wow.
For dialysis, there's a couple of choices you have, and it becomes significant. You got hemodialysis. Everyone's familiar with that somewhat. You go in, they put monster needles in your arm, and they draw your blood out, filter it, and put it back. It takes about 4 hours to run that, and you do it 3 times a week. Puts your whole body into a seesaw. It's pretty miserable, actually. We described it as being the half man, because you feel like half a man, and half the time you feel like a man.
Wow.
And then there's peritoneal dialysis, where they actually use your peritoneum, the bag that your stomach sits in, as a filter membrane. You put a charge of special water solution in there, the toxins seep into it, and then you dump it out after a few hours and put a new charge in. And so you've always got this, oh, and I lost the name for it, osmosis. And so it uses this osmosis to draw the toxins out. But the problem there is that if you get any bacteria into your peritoneum, there's no defense for it, and it's an emergency room visit right away. So we decided to go peritoneal, and it really was a pretty decent option. It allowed me to continue working. I was able to do it at work, at home, in bed. I got good at doing it anywhere. I felt like the Sam I Am story. Could you on a train? Yes, you could or would. I could do it anywhere. The other thing that happens that they don't talk about with kidney failure and dialysis is that even when you're cleaning up like this, you still have more toxins than a regular healthy person. And so those toxins produce a kind of a chemical depression. And so you're always, even on good days, bad days, whatever, you're always chemically depressed.
Wow.
So now we're kind of getting close to the crisis point, right? We got back from Oklahoma City. Thursday, I had the catheter installed for the peritoneal dialysis. Just for dating here, this is July 6th now. I infused my first bag of peritoneal solution and got some coming back, but still not great. Remember I told you to be half a man. So I'm only half a man, but at least I'm better. I was about a quarter or a third of a man before that. So half a man's doing good. And then I started getting what's called restless leg syndrome. You got to roll over, you got to move your legs every 20 minutes or so, and which makes it really tough in the night. It was also tough in the daytime. I'd be at meetings and I'd have to stand up and kind of pace the back of the meeting room because my legs would just scream to be moved. If you like sat on your haunches for a long period of time and your legs just, move me. Well, I would be doing that every 20 minutes.
Wow.
This kind of sets you up for like maybe 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night. Okay.
Wow.
That's another fun thing that the Lord gave me here. Now we're up to 2,000. We became aware of 4 families in different relational circles, but they're all homeschoolers. But the fathers had died. One of them got a hospital error. Another one, he was doing a Bible study, and one of his students at the Bible study came in with a knife and stabbed him in the neck.
What?
Yep. And another one died in a car crash. Stuff like this. The family decided, well, we should do something to help them if we could. Now, I don't think our kids realized that we were already somewhat in a financial difficult position at this point anyway. We were seriously looking at whether I'd be able to continue working. Still had a mortgage on the house we were trying to get paid off. And besides, they didn't really realize that there was a 5th man that we were very seriously concerned about dying, and that was us. And they were about to be the next set of orphans and widows.
Yeesh.
But they wanted to.
I didn't even know that part.
Well, that's what I'm telling you. this will be a part of another story in a way, but you know, your mom identified a breast lump in 97. And so she is fighting breast cancer at the same time I'm fighting kidney failure. And one of our more morbid jokes was about which one of us was going to survive the other.
Wow.
Okay. Just kind of letting you know where the noise is happening here. Okay. Well, we decided that we could hold a garage sale, and we had a bunch of friends, other homeschoolers that would donate stuff. And by the time the dust cleared in March, we had raised $1,200, and we kind of made a point of writing checks to each of these 4 families. And while I was doing it, I was kind of thinking, yeah, us too.
Wow.
But God was in that. I believe it was connected. The Bible says that the one who waters will be watered himself. During this time, one of the things I was struggling with was my iron was going low. And so we were trying to keep my iron up. And unfortunately, too much iron, you can get a blockage in your intestines. And I got that. I began vomiting at more meals than not. If I ate more than like half a dozen bites, I would suddenly, within a second or two, just throw it up all. And I would have 1 or 2 seconds to lunge for a trash can or the sink or whatever. I could not get out of that for a couple of months. The doctor said, well, here, have a fiber drink. Did not help. We did finally get out of that. But during that time, I was praying, Lord, you got to do something. I'm dying here. And the words from the song, God leads us along, that he would take his children, some through the water, some through the flood, some through the fire, but all through the blood.
Amen.
And that I was praying for God to get me out of this, but I wasn't going to get out of any of it. I had to go through it all, and I would go through it. That was the promise. And then there was a tag that was really curious to me, but this trial would not be financial. And I kind of puzzled over what that meant. But I see that connected to our being generous in difficulty before with the widows.
Wow.
Another note here that I'd throw in, my wife did not share my peace about that because she didn't hear God's voice. She worried about where the money was going to come from. And it was difficult for me to give her that trust, that peace. And I think about, Abraham got a promise from God. Sarah never got a promise.
Wow,
Sarah had to trust in Abraham's promise. But anyway, coming around to May, a niece got married up in Idaho, and we all went to a reception. And I wouldn't have gone because I was in too bad a shape. But her husband was a kidney transplant patient, and his father was the donor. And so I was going to be able to interview both the donor and the recipient. My kidney business is getting worse slowly, and I'm struggling. And so transplant's looking more and more like a bad option, but maybe it might be the best of 3 bad options. I'm still losing a whole bunch of meals at this point. Oh, traveling with peritoneal dialysis, you use about 35 pounds of solution a day in peritoneal dialysis. Think about that as 5-gallon bucket. We're going to move it into a box and put it in bags. But if I'm going for a week, I am taking with me 7 5-gallon buckets of solutions. And then I got my luggage.
Wow. So
any trip, business trip, pleasure, whatever, becomes a real burden to do. Okay. Also, you need to have a sterile, clean area to connect and disconnect the bags. And so that's also kind of a hassle. So we went. I was fighting for kind of a sense of normality here, trying to behave like other people. But face it, I've got a hose hanging out my belly. I've got an ashen color that on my face you can't hide. I'm vomiting on a regular basis. It's not like I can really blend in with the family. Something else Lois noticed was that my son, Jesse, who's hosting this thing, was really mean to his older sister, kind of the same way that I was mean to Lois, she noticed. But she also noticed that Jesse used the same kind of arguments to try to get out of it, and I wouldn't take a second of it. I don't know how much you remember about that, Jesse, but
very little.
Because it wasn't really any different to you, because I was always doing that. I was jumping on you. You're pestering your sister. But one of the things that she was really frustrated by was how she got no protection from dad or mom, from me, but I was providing Melissa with that protection from you.
Mm.
And she saw in that a kind of real heart repentance. Even as miserable as I obviously was, I would not let anything you did slip by. Now, she didn't talk to me about that at the time. That happened later. But that made a major difference for her in deciding that she was ready to offer me a kidney. If I had not been there, don't know how God would have gotten her to sign up for the kidney transplant. So there's another kind of a God thing there on the side. So we go back home. There's no conversation about that, of course, at the wedding reception. And I'm still basically fighting for my life on a daily basis. We had Melissa's birthday, and I got a bad peritoneal infection right before the party for her. Went to the hospital, and they did not follow protocols. They wanted to wait for testing. The rule was if you have somebody's peritoneal and they have an intestinal pain, immediately you start giving them antibiotics in their peritoneal bag while you're figuring out what else it might be, because you get scar tissue building up very rapidly in the peritoneum. Well, they didn't do that. They left me there languishing for like 8 hours and scarred my peritoneum adequately to where I was no longer a subject of peritoneal dialysis. I was struggling. I was barely making it, but that basically took me off of peritoneal. Remember, I'm taking steps down here. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go through it, and God's making sure that through it has a lot of through it.
Yeesh.
So, but I'm not in bad enough shape yet. So, May 14th, my hose incision point begins to leak. Well, that's not supposed to do that. It's leaking solution out from around the hose from my skin.
Ooh.
Okay. And so they say, well, let's go dry for a couple of days and see if that heals up. Maybe you're losing too much weight. By the way, at this point, I was approaching 155. Coworkers later on said that I was reminiscent of an Auschwitz survivor.
Wow.
Because I was so thin. Okay. Because I'm starving to death slowly because I am not able to eat enough to handle my needs. If I eat more than just that little bit, then I'm throwing it up.
Wow.
Okay. So a couple of days later, I tried refilling it again, and it was leaking. I didn't even get the bag all the way filled in.
Ooh.
Okay. The flow is going in, and we're leaking out. And then that night, because we said, well, okay, we'll deal with it tomorrow. That night, the hose slipped out into my hand, came completely out of my abdomen. So I called them at the clinic. They told me that couldn't happen. I told them I had it in my hand. So then I go in, and it's obvious we're not putting that thing back in. So they had to put me on hemodialysis. Remember that choice I was trying to make? Well, God took the choice away from me, put me on hemo. They put a catheter to my neck that they could get into, and so now I'm on hemodialysis. But I haven't stepped down far enough yet. So Lois offers me a kidney. I still got peritoneal dialysis as a possibility. We don't know that I've scarred that much yet. So I'm kind of hoping for PD, but I don't want to turn down this kidney, and I'm not really doing very good right now. So we're going to go forward and see about the transplant. But she's got time constraints because she's a school teacher, and by the middle of June, she's got to be back to fit for full duty. And so they need 6 weeks for that because they're going into her, pulling a kidney out. It's not easy. They're hidden in the back. And so if we can't get it done by the 1st of July, we have to scrub it for next year. And of course, part of me says, well, okay, I'm not sure I want to do a transplant. I'm not quite that bad yet. The other part of me says, I can't turn this down. So here I've got these conflicting emotions, but God's not done with the steps down yet. Turns out that kidney transplant, the transplant centers are familiar with doing this long distance. So I'm going to a transplant clinic in San Francisco to do tests on me. Lois drives about 4 hours down to Kansas City. They do tests on her, and some of the tests go wrong. Not that they are bad results, they mess the test up. Okay? And it takes her 4 hours down and 4 hours back. And so it's like a major trip for her. And so they got to go down there and get into it. Well, finally, after the third try, we ran out of time. We had arrived at the 1st of July, and we didn't even have all the testing done.
Wow.
Let alone a date, and they wouldn't give you a date less than 2 weeks out. And I'm going to admit, anger, frustration, confusion with God. I forgot about this thing. You're going to go through it. Why would you offer me a transplant and dangle the hope in front of me and then snatch it away? Because when you're not sleeping every night, getting a couple hours of sleep a night, still working hard, doing dialysis, all this stuff, you're chemically messed up and emotionally frazzled, and I was just mad at God.
Wow.
But fortunately, God wasn't mad at me.
Amen.
Okay. So this email loop I told you about before with all the exciting stuff about the third arm growing out of your chest, somebody posted something on that loop about a study being done with the goal of eliminating the steroids and anti-rejection drugs. And the study itself was fairly clinical and boring, but when you're reading it as a patient, it was pretty interesting. And I could almost like hear the voice of the Lord saying, here is your answer. This is what you're waiting for. If I had given you the transplant on your schedule, you would not have gone here.
Wow.
So I looked up the two doctors involved. It's kind of funny. The University of Wisconsin-Madison never replied to me, but about a couple of weeks after I'd sent the email to the doctor at the NIH, I got a note back from a nurse there that coordinates their transplants, and she had a ton of questions, which is a good thing. I like questions. And she basically said, well, you know, we're real slow about this stuff. You're going to have to wait. Of course, I'm already stuck right now because I'm waiting until next June, right? So yeah, I can wait. Called up Lois, and she was feeling as though she had been letting me down because somehow she felt like it was her fault that the Kansas City doctors didn't get the right tests done right. Okay.
Huh.
I'm sure she did not choose which vials to fill or whatever it was, but she really liked this idea. And so we crafted a new plan targeting for the 1st of June, 2002. And it would have to be at the NIH in Washington, D.C., actually Bethesda, Maryland, but right across the border. Now, this did bring another thing. We talked about how we were kind of struggling financially at the time. Earlier, we had to cover all the travel and housing expenses outside of the NIH for the trip. The NIH would cover everything medical in the hospital, drugs, et cetera, for 5 years. They would take care of that. We needed to go there and let them poke on us personally. They would not take the testing from San Francisco. They needed to do their own tests. And so now this is 2001, and my appointment was September 18th, 2001, which was a week after the World Trade Center bombing. And right before that, the week before that, the doctor decided he needed a vacation, and so we had to reschedule us for October 10th. I was kind of disappointed with that too, until September 11th, and basically the whole air business got shut down cold over the whole U.S. for the next couple of weeks.
That's crazy that God knew that was going to happen and canceled your flight early.
Well, he didn't cancel the flight. I had to cancel my own flight, but he canceled my appointment. But, yeah. So finally, October 10th, it was still a mess, but it was not nearly as bad in October as it was the week after everything had hit. There'd probably been no way for us to get there in that week for September 18th, okay? The other thing to point out, though, is that now we are starting to generate expenses. This is the other big one, okay? Because we're buying tickets and then we're getting rescheduling fees. Now, the summer itself, medically, was a mess. I'm not going to take you through everything, but they had to take the catheter pieces out from the hose that came out. So they did a surgery to put the new catheter in, thinking I was going to do peritoneal. They found out that I couldn't do peritoneal because I had all that scarring from the thing back near Melissa's birthday. So I got a whole surgery for free. Then we turned back around, and the catheter they put in my neck is only good for like 3 months, and I'm already running out of my 3 months on the catheter, so they got to put surgery in my arm to turn it into another hemodialysis port. So I spent the whole summer getting surgery in one way or another. In the midst of all this, my doctor says she thinks I'm working too hard. I was still pulling a 40-hour schedule.
Dang.
And Now, here's the thing: if I'm going on to hemodialysis, I can't do 40 hours because 12 hours of dialysis is during the day. I'm still having trouble sleeping at night. That stuff's all still going on. I am eating a little bit better now. I'm not back to full diet, but I'm at least eating enough to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I was able to get an agreement with my work, though, that they would put me on half disability. I would work half time, get disabled half time, so that I don't have a cut in pay. And if I don't get the transplant for any reason next summer, full disability guaranteed. I'm out of work.
Wow.
Okay. So I reluctantly agreed to that, but I was kind of running out of gas. So I had said, well, maybe I am failing here. So now we're running on hemodialysis 3 days a week. And I'm telling my boss all that's going on. Happened to talk to some of my coworkers that were in a different department that I'd left a couple years before this. And they decided if I was willing, they would do a benefit luncheon for me.
Wow.
Now, there's about a half a dozen people in this department that have kind of made a reputation for themselves for doing benefit luncheons, and they would do it for various causes, okay? But they typically did not do it for individuals, okay? And so they did a tri-tip lunch. They charged $10 a head for it, and then the plan was that I get whatever's left over, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And they were expecting to be able to probably give me better than $1,000. That's kind of where the market had been running for them. Okay, a whole bunch of happy people eat, big clubhouse. You know, the cooking business is all lots of fun. So it's kind of a fun event as well as a benefit thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I put myself at the front door to thank people that came, and there were so many people that came that I had to get a chair because I couldn't stand up that long.
Wow.
By the end of the day, they gave me a tin with $2,500 in it.
Whoa.
This was the first time. I've always been more of the earner, the worker, the donator. This was the first time that I had received a financial donation in my life.
Wow.
By the time we left in October for that first, my check up there,
Mm-hmm.
we had $11,000 that had come in.
Wow. From where?
All over the place. It was really weird. You got the first 2,500.
Mm-hmm.
There was a missionary family in Japan that sent $500. Now, Japan's not a cheap place to be. And this family had 6 kids. Okay.
Wow.
And they're missionaries, which means that they're already like running cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's not the best income possibility there. Okay.
Yeah.
But we had $11,000 that was given in 10s and 20s and 50s and 100s from different people that we knew. But it was lots of money coming in on an almost daily basis that somebody would send us something.
I remember during that time, like people even gave money to Melissa and I.
Yes.
For souvenirs.
That's right.
I remember there were 2 twin sisters who saved up their babysitting money and gave Melissa and I each, I want to say it was like $20 each or something like that. And being a kid and just having someone give you money, it was mind-boggling.
Well, it was mind-boggling with the bigger numbers too. But by the time we left in October, we had $11,000 that had been donated to us somewhere, anywhere. Just as a brief thing going forward, by this time that following year, we would be done with the transplant and we would have spent it all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now, real briefly, I don't remember that we ever asked for money.
No, we did not ask for money. It started with the luncheon that my work did. Okay. They said they wanted to do this for me. Would I permit it? And my answer was yes. One of the things we'd learned from our books that we read, they would talk about you don't ask for money, but if somebody offers you something, you accept it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so now your mother did put out prayer requests for us in the situation. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But we were not beating the bushes for people to send us money.
So that $1,200 to the widows, God turned around and turned that into tenfold, basically.
Yes, it was a tithe.
Wow. That's awesome.
And I'm not going to quibble about, well, it should have been 12,000 then. I'm not sure that it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But we documented $11,000.
I wonder if all the extra things like the free rental car and the free place to stay and all the other stuff, I'm sure that added into that too.
Well, no, that's not a part of the 11,000. If you say calculate rent on the house that we got to stay in, calculate rent on the car, it's going to make more than $100 easy. Okay, more than $1,000 easy. You could say, well, from the freebies, we went way over.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'm just letting you know how it worked. When we went out in October, we stayed with the family for free. There's another one of those we should have paid a hotel for, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now we did rent a car, but that's all right. We got the hotel for free. Okay. And we got a really neat family to live with, believers, and they sang well. So that was good. That would have been the Shell Hazes, our first contact with the Shell Hazes.
I remember them.
So at this point, I got accepted. And coincidentally, when I calculated, I had exactly 100 more dialysis sessions that I had to go through before June.
Wow.
Okay. So Lois had to go for test too. We got her cleared, and she did that in November, right before Thanksgiving. And now at this point, all I got to do is tread water for the next 6 months, 9 months, basically, because if I get sick, transplant's off.
Mm-hmm.
And if the transplant's off, then I quit work and go on disability.
Wow.
Okay, all these dominoes are going to start falling against me, if I can call it that. So moving forward, we made a plan that I could not go with the family, but the whole family needed to go, including my mom. So everybody rode the train except for me, because every other day I've got to do dialysis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the train takes 3 days to get there, so I can't do it. So I dropped them off, did my last dialysis, and then I'm flying and I'm beating them there. Another thing, while we're working all these plans, a friend of ours was a missionary. She would do missionary work in Africa. She had a mission that she worked with, and she was going to be gone, and she was looking for a house sitter. And she lived about 4 miles or so from the NIH's facility. We would be house sitting for her for the next 2 months while she's gone. And Mary had a cousin that lived about an hour away that was able to loan us a vehicle, a little Toyota RAV4 for just about a month to tool around in. So we didn't have to rent a car for that period. So we got a free house and a free car for about half the time. I was going to be there for 2 months. So now we are moved into Angie's house, 4 miles from the NIH. And I am moved into the NIH itself because I'm going to be locked in. And I was supposed to go pick up the kids and mom and Lois and everybody. Oh, Lois and her daughter, Jasmine, got on the train in Osceola, Iowa as they went across because it was very close to Lois. So we picked them up. So what started out as a party of 4 in California ends up a party of 6 by the time it lands in DC.
Mm-hmm.
Except that they had to drug me to put in another catheter for my transplant, and now I cannot drive, and we have no way to contact the family on the train, and so I am like totally out of the picture. And another family comes and rescues the family there, rescues our family at the train station. A real God thing there. So
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, and the train got a power outage about an hour out of town. And so they were stuck there for a while. Totally messed up everybody. I just keep thinking I'm going to go through it. This is going through it, but God's going to bring me through it.
So at what point did you realize that God really was providing for you to go through it? Was it when the money started coming in, or at what point did you really start seeing that?
I believed it without seeing anything when I heard God's voice.
Mm.
Okay. The thing about it not being financial was enough different that I recognized that could not have been my thought. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people will invent the voice of God talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I really am afraid of that. But that as a twist was kind of out of left field for me. And even if I thought I might have invented you're not getting out of it, you're going through it,
Mm-hmm.
I could not see myself inventing but it won't be financial.
Because from where you were standing, it would very much be financial.
Well, no, just because that wouldn't be something that I would um, try to get God to promise. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That was foreign to me. Okay. The kind of the twist to it, not
Yeah.
the words themselves, and so while I was in a lot of difficulties, I was expectant that God's going to fix this somehow. I'm
Mm-hmm.
miserable. I'm going through hell, but God's in it.
Yeah.
Okay. And I do admit when Lois offered me the transplant and then we timed out with the Kansas City thing, I'm going to say I lost my faith. Okay.
Mm.
In an immediate sense, I was angry at God
Mm-hmm.
because I forgot that he had this.
Mm.
Okay. But I got back on the horse, certainly when I got the message about the study.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, this is where I ought to be. Okay.
Yeah.
That really, I want to say, kind of slapped me awake again and said, you got to trust me. Okay,
Yeah.
there's more to go through, but you're going through it and you're going to come out
Mm-hmm.
the back end. Okay, so finally we're at the day of the transplant, and there's one patient before me, or I'm sorry, it was right after me, that found out that they had gone all the way there just like we had. They did some final testing and they were not able to do the transplant after all. They had to send them home with no surgery.
Wow.
And so we had to get through this last cross match it was Monday, surgery's on Tuesday. We passed that test Monday night. We are scheduled for Tuesday morning as a surgery that works fine. Surgery's not really good, but 9 o'clock, I'm rolling off looking for a kidney. And 2 p.m., I'm waking up and don't remember much in the middle.
Mm.
But as anybody knows that's had surgery, you get all these hoses and whatnot attached to you, and you feel pretty dead. But I didn't. I felt really hungry, a little bit groggy, but I was hungry.
Wow.
Very hungry. Turns out they're going to let me eat right off the bat. And I got some pain, not bad. My mind is clear, feeling pretty good. One of the things that noticed here is that as the toxins are coming out, my energy levels are coming back.
Wow.
I am revving up. It's like living for the last 4 years with your hand over your mouth and you couldn't breathe. Finally, I can breathe.
Wow.
And the restless leg syndrome I talked about before, totally gone.
Wow.
So next morning, I'm really doing good. Revving up. I'm about half my age. I feel like I'm back to 20 again. Sitting up in bed, fog's gone. They decide I should go for a walk. Now, this is kind of tough because I've got all kinds of hoses and whatnot attached to me and machines attached. So it's actually a 3-person job to walk me down the hall because you got me and I got a walker because they want to make sure in case I fall over.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a girdle on because the kidney feels like it's going to flop out of my belly. Okay. They don't mount the new kidney back in the back where the old kidneys are. They put it up in the front to the side. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's attached at the bottom. And so it really feels like the top is going to flop out and it's just going to be hanging there swinging by your blood vessels.
Wow.
Okay. And so you got this girdle on trying to talk it into staying in. And you got all these hoses and pipes coming out of you. And so there's one person that is just taking all the equipment with you.
Mm.
Okay. And then there's a person behind me with a wheelchair. In case I can't make it and I got to sit down, I don't fall on the floor.
Wow.
Okay. So
3-man escort.
Yeah, you got this parade basically walking down the hall. And I go in there and I'm able to visit and thank Lois and whatnot. This is when I found out that, the Lord, she didn't tell me this, but the Lord told her that she was going to have complications. And so she had an infiltration in her IV in her hand, and she had a leak. They did a spinal tap in her back, and that had a leak in there. But she'd be past all that stuff, and she'd be back on track. And so she was also spiritually struggling. Okay. the Lord told me I'm going to have complications. What are they going to be?
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't have a promise that it was going to be temporary and all cleared up. There might be something residual that she lives with.
Hmm.
Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
she didn't know that. But fortunately, everything that she had was all temporary and they resolved themselves within not too long. Now, the study was about killing off my immune system so that they put the kidney in, they sneak it in while my immune system's wiped out, and then it doesn't know that something's been added, fundamentally. And so they gave me a drug regimen to do that, and gave me a rash. All kind of weird stuff happened, but that's okay because I got a kidney. There was complications like that too. Lois goes back home after about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, about 3 weeks. And I got released from my first overnight. I had been living for the first just about a month in the hospital, never leaving my floor.
Wow.
Okay. We talked about the virus and the lockdown. Well, I had lockdown.
Wow.
Okay. And the floor was not very big. So you walk up to one end, you walk up to the other end, and that's it. Like there's one corner you get to enjoy.
Wow.
But now I'm out, and I'm out for night visits. And then first I got day visits, then I got overnight visits. Very slowly over the course of 2 months that we were in, finally they were ready for me to go home. I started to develop a little bit of a swelling in my mouth, and my ankles and knees started swelling. But that was a known side effect for one of the drugs that I was on, because I still had to take some drugs in this interim period, but they decided to send me home anyway.
Hmm.
So end of July, I'm released with reservations, and I get to ride home on Amtrak because I don't have dialysis. So I actually get to go home with the family and watch the scenery go by on the train, watch Nebraska go by, corn and corn and corn. After I got home, though, my mouth sores got worse, my ankles and knees got worse, until finally I was diluting yogurt with milk to make it more palatable.
What?
And riding in the wheelchair. Yes. At one point, and you probably had cold sores, I had 8 cold sores in my mouth, on cheeks, under my tongue, against my gums, 8 of them.
Wow.
And then it went to 7 because 2 of them merged. Okay. Nothing went away, but the space between them merged. And I was having a very difficult time. And because of this, I could not talk more than a mumble.
Oh my.
Okay. I'm still working 20 hours a week, still doing everything. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm mumbling. And I'm using a wheelchair at work.
Wow.
The wheelchair was donated by some people at church, so I didn't buy it. But in spite of that, we had planned on going for a bed and breakfast for our anniversary, which is September 5th. Well, we called them up at the NIH, and when they heard about my situation, they said, "You get out here tomorrow."
Dang.
And so we had to cancel our anniversary thing, and it was kind of nice because we had already arranged for my mom to be here to take care of you 2 kids. And so we had our babysitter lined up so I could go back. And I didn't think I needed your mom, but it turned out I really did need her, because we go to the airport. Remember, I'm not through it yet, right? I got to go through everything.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we get to the Oakland airport, and we are in the line to board the plane. And one of the cleanup crew accidentally triggers the inflatable ramp thing that the airplane has at the door. And they say it takes about 4 hours to wrap that thing back up. Okay. So deploying that ramp puts the airplane on hold for the next 4 hours.
Whoops.
But that's okay because they found us another flight, but it's coming out of San Francisco. So everyone go to the luggage rack. We're putting your luggage on the rack right now to come off. Grab your suitcases like you just arrived somewhere. We've got a van outside. Hurry out there. So you uncheck your bags, you hurry out there, you get into this van, and they will drive you over, get you onto this other plane from San Francisco going the same place. So we got you covered. Well, it's not so easy to do that in a wheelchair.
Wow.
Because I'm not able to handle my luggage very well. And so your mom's doing all that stuff. We get out to this van, and the guy grabs my arm and yanks me up into the van. And fast movement hurts way more than slow movement.
Ooh.
So it's like my knees and ankles just explode in pain. Okay. But then there's a seat right there close to the
Mm-hmm.
getting in. There's a guy sitting there and he refuses to move out of that place to let me in. And I can't even protest that, hey man, I'm really in trouble. Treat me like a human here. He will not move there even to get out of the way so that I don't have to crawl over him to get to my place. Past him. This was very humbling for me. I would say humiliating, really. But because I couldn't talk, I can't say anything to him about it. I just have to accept it. Crawl over him, further exacerbating the great pain from getting yanked up in there.
Mm-hmm.
And we get over to San Francisco. There, what do I have? I've got a set of stairs.
Ooh. Ugh.
And so I am basically arm lifting myself because I cannot bend knee to go up the stairs. I am arm lifting myself up the rail.
Wow.
To get into the plane.
It's a lot of pain you're in.
Well, now God told me I was going to go through it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And he neglected to tell me about that part, but he did say I was going to go through it. So I was there for about 3 weeks, got past that, got a little different drug regimen, got back home. And after about 6 months of that, I was pretty much back in shape. Got my leg function back by about a year.
Mm-hmm.
So January 2003 is significant, not because it's a God day, but it says something here. We went on a vacation to Legoland in San Diego.
Remember that.
You remember that? I walked the whole Legoland. Now, it was painful. That is to say, by the end of the day, I was hurting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I made it through Legoland and I was that good. Coming around June of 2003, I'm going upstairs 2 at a time, like I used to a long time ago. It's like it's all been a bad dream.
Wow.
Okay, except for I look at my belly and I still have a whole bunch of cuts. And so I know that part of it was real.
Wow.
Now, there's a side business here that I want to talk about. My sister and I really had a tough relationship, mostly my fault, maybe 97.5% my fault. But as a part of the study, they required the 2 of us to fly back to the NIH several times over the next 5 years so they could poke and prod and see how things were going with this transplanted kidney. And that left Lois and I in the same waiting room talking several times. And this discussion allowed us to clear up a lot of the stuff that I had done to her, gave me a place for repentance, gave her a place for forgiveness, although she said she'd already forgiven in order to donate the kidney. But that produced a major reconciliation in our relationship. And one of the big lessons that I got out of that is that God cares a whole bunch more about relationship than we do. And for us, it is easier. The easiest solution if you're in a bad relationship with somebody is you cut it off.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need them anyway. We'll just cut the cord.
Yeah.
God does not cut cords like that.
Glad he doesn't.
God is God of reconciling.
Amen.
He reconciles regardless of the pain. Jesus accepted the pain, coming here, beaten, crucified. He did that in order to reconcile us.
Amen.
And it says that he is reconciling us to God, and he is making us, what does it say in 2 Corinthians? Ministers of reconciliation. And when my heart is with God's heart, I am not cutting people off because they're too difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I am pursuing whatever I can. Is there a way for me to make a reconciliation out of this? And sometimes you can't. Even God cannot reconcile everybody, okay?
Yeah.
But I think God tries a lot harder than we do typically. So the other big thing that I would say out of this is that now, if I didn't have lab reports and cuts in my tummy and all this kind of good stuff, it would be hard to tell that I ever went through hell for 4 years, 5 years kind of back when I was 40. God pulled me through that thing completely. He did a spiritual work, but it's like he said, okay, you passed the test. I'm putting all the physical stuff back. And now it's back.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Well, our God is an awesome God, and he is the great physician, and he is the provider.
He's the reconciler.
And the reconciler, yeah. That's awesome.
And that was longer than you thought, wasn't it?
It was a great story, though. You know, it's really awesome for me having lived through it. You know, and I was like 6, 7, 8 years old, so I wasn't really super conscious. But that whole story just really shows me God's power. You know.
And I guess the big thing I want to point out about God's power in it is that he didn't have to do anything visibly miraculous,
Mm-hmm.
either to bring me down, and he needed to bring me down, or to bring me back. And so you could take any one of the events described and say, well, that just kind of happened, except for maybe the hose falling out. Nobody ever heard that hose fall out thing. That was like totally off the wall. But God was able to work through these particular moves in this timing to take me from a kidney failure, a very proud kidney failure. I don't know that I'm truly humble yet, but a very proud kidney failure, through a valley, totally changed my relationship with God,
Mm-hmm.
bring me back, and now it's all a dream.
Wow.
If I didn't have all the physical reminders, I would sometimes struggle to say, did that really happen? Because I'm in such great shape.
Praise God.
Yes.
Well, thank you for your story, and thanks for sharing it with us. I'm excited to hear people's response to it.
All right.
Appreciate you for telling the story.
God bless you, Jesse. I love you like a son.
If you like the story today, please don't hesitate to spread the love. Share it, like it, and subscribe to hear more. If you want to share a story from your life about an encounter with God, please don't hesitate to email me at jesse@newawakeningministries.org. Stay safe and remember, the kingdom is among us.